Welcome to Let's Talk Possibility. Today is the 19th of November. This is episode 55. Tonight, we are with Robin Wheeler and Khadija Patel. We look at what goes into building credibility for individuals and brands. Welcome to Let's Talk Possibility, where we explore ideas, challenge thinking, and inspire action. My name is Monge Zimtati, hosting alongside Talana Simpson.
Hello.
This evening, we look at credibility. We needed to make change happen, and once tarnished, it's harder to regain it than it is to build it. We look today at what it takes to build it, and how you regain trust once you've lost the reputation that made you a trusted source in the first place. With us in studio this evening is Khadija Patel, who works as a journalist and a columnist for South Africa's hottest e-publications, including Thought Leader, the Daily Maverick, and its swanky tablet computer version, the iMaverick. Khadija established Mukatano Publications, intent on facilitating dialogue between Africans. Joining us once again, whom we've had with us once in studio, is Robin Wheeler, who has been in a rock band, written 4 books, and takes regular sojourns to Southeast Asia. He has unique views of what life should be about and what's possible when you stop pretending to be yourself. Rather, let me go back into Robin Wheeler's thing. So he has been in a rock band. He regularly goes to Southeast Asia. He has unique views of what life should be about and what's possible when you stop pretending to be someone else instead of being yourself for a living. So what is credibility? Robin, the last time you joined us, we talked at length about being yourself for a living, and we talked about your books as well. Since then, you launched Suing for Service, a campaign which questions the credibility of brands and companies. What is your campaign trying to prove?
Well, I'm delighted that you introduced me saying that I have a unique view on things, because that's what I'm hoping to present here. Suing for Service is something that arose out of rage, frankly, at the service that we're subject to in the world. People say it's a South African problem, but we may have certain problems here, but it's a global thing, and it's really a lack of authenticity that's behind it, a lack of awareness, you know. So we got companies pretending to give us good service and telling us in their marketing campaigns how good it is, but then we're all having a very different experience. So there's an incongruence between what they're presenting and what they're actually doing, you know. So that it's my attempt to try and wake people up and to through the service experience to make a better world, really.
How has it been received, though?
Well, on a small scale, wherever I go, I confront service, and I try and stir things up and facilitate that it moves towards people doing things better. And that works, you know. It's not easy, because wherever you go, people they know they're in the wrong, and they resist being helped, if I euphemize it. I mean, I'm helping them, but you have to sometimes confront them first. And to do that, you've got to go on your own experience, which can often be very emotional and passionate. But it works, and I find that wherever I go, people sooner or later change and get better. In terms of the campaign, it's been going just over a month, and it's been well received by some people, and there's been complete and utter apathy from others, which is exactly what I'm confronting. So it's a long-term thing, and I think so far I've done well, and I'm going to keep at it.
Khadija, you started out blogging. You helped to build a magazine. You started your own project as Mukatano Publications, and in all of that, you then started writing. You then got taken on by the Daily Maverick to start writing for them, and in my mind, that was, you know, your blogging, or the 4 posts that you had done before you started getting noticed as a blogger, was you building credibility. Can one intentionally go out to build credibility?
I think, I think that credibility comes with you being sincere about what you do. I don't think, I can leave here today and say, oh yes, I'm going to go build a credible brand, or I'm going to, force credibility into my publication. I think what you have to do is realize, find out what it is you're trying to do, what is your objective, and make sure that whatever you're doing towards that objective is imbued with sincerity.
Yes.
Because then credibility comes naturally. You rightly pointed out that I went through a phase where I was a blogger in South Africa. I was a postgrad student, and I was a blogger. I was a nobody, but I was using social media actively. And at one stage, I was the go-to person in South Africa as a blogger, as a person, as an unpublished journalist in the mainstream. I became the go-to person for broadcast media in the mainstream to find out what's happening in the Middle East and North Africa during the Egyptian revolution last year. And I was able to do that because I sincerely followed what was happening there. I didn't, try to find something out of it for myself. It was something that I was genuinely interested in, and I genuinely felt that there was not enough coverage of the topic in South Africa. So it was something that I pursued, and I actively went after, and I actively made sure that this gets picked up by more people in South Africa. So I think it comes down to sincerity of purpose. I think that's where credibility is built, a sincerity of purpose.
And part of that to me is also being authentic then. Because if you're not sincere about what you're trying to do, so if you didn't have that personal interest. So it's just like you were saying, Robin, your interaction with some of the brands you're interacting with might be very emotional, and that's because of your authenticity and sincerity in that moment. You bringing your experience to those companies.
Yes. But there's also another side to it, and that's why I said this idea of me presenting a unique point of view. I think there are a lot of companies that are succeeding, in inverted commas, making huge profits, building their share of the market, so to speak, but they're not authentic. There's propaganda involved. If you look at the origin of propaganda, public relations is actually a euphemism for propaganda. When psychology became popular 100 years ago or so, it was actually Freud's nephew who started using the idea of the unconscious and the sort of analysis of human behavior and what motivates it to inform political campaigns, and that became a business thing where businesses know how to manipulate consumers by telling them certain things or appealing to certain needs. And that's why when you mentioned in your write-up earlier for the show about, say, Woolworths, for example, where people kind of tried to make a public statement about Woolworths and stand up against something they didn't like, and that lasted all of 15 minutes.
Yes.
That's the problem, is that companies are succeeding, and they're brainwashing us into just buying things we don't need and living in ways that are not really authentic. And you can say from a shareholder point of view that they're doing well, but from an overall systemic or sort of humanitarian point of view, they're just taking a short-term view all the time and raking in the money for it, but not actually serving the world very well at all. So it might look like their brand is credible, but actually all they've done is manipulate the consumer's mind. And politics is a good example of that, where two candidates might be essentially the same, and it doesn't really matter which one gets in, but the whole consumer mentality is manipulated through the media to look like you've got a choice, and one's red and one's blue, or whether it's a football team or a political struggle, so to speak. People think they're actually doing something, like they've got consumer power to go and choose a different leader or supplier through what they do, but actually you don't have any choice. So that thing of waking up to who you really are and what you're authentically doing, it's quite a difficult thing to do because of social pressures.
So I mean, one of the things that comes up quite a lot is the authenticity, and one of them, which Khadija mentioned, was sincerity of purpose. So where then do things like public relations, which has become a viable business and accelerates, that credibility building or reputation building exercise, come in, or what role do they play in building your credibility?
I think people just need to be conscious, for your sincerity of purpose, you've got to know who you are. You've got to pursue something that really means something to you. So you've got to be in tune. You've got to be aware of who you are, and you've got to understand what's happening in the world in a lucid way. And then you need to take some risks. You need to put yourself out there. And a lot of people are just doing what the client so-called wants, or what the brief is. And that's why we don't get good service, because people are not really pursuing their purpose in their work. They're just trying to get by, or they've got into this kind of sleepy state where they're just going to work every day and sitting there and doing something that fundamentally they don't agree with.
So there's two sides then. There's actually the people that are doing the public relations on behalf of someone else. So that is one way to build a credibility, is to build a profile in the public sphere, obviously depending on your intention, your intention of purpose. But the other side I'm hearing is maybe that people who need to be more aware.
Yeah.
So in other words, people that are reading the PR, reading the articles in the newspaper, need to understand that this is just someone who's slanted, could have easily slanted the angle, or that the company is advertising one aspect but not telling you all the facts, and at least you go and look for it.
Yes.
You would then get a better perspective.
That to me is happening in the world. People are becoming more aware, but it usually happens the hard way. Humankind is like nature. We've got inertia, and just the same way that a river is going to flow the same shortest route possible to the sea, it's not going to wake up one morning and decide to change course. It needs a rock to fall into the way, or a tree to, and then it'll choose a different path. Humans need something to shift them, and usually that's hardship of some kind. So all this financial struggle that the world's going through, people are starting to look through it and read between the lines and see, well, actually, America says one thing, but they're $15 trillion in debt and going up at 10% per annum, and they can't even service the interest on that debt. So now these people are not congruent with what they're saying, and what they're doing are not congruent. And sooner or later, everybody needs to be able to see through that and make new choices.
So that brings that to me, that congruency is another element of credibility. Yes. That's, and I call integrity as well.
Yes.
Do you walk your talk? Is what you say and do, so is what people see in the media actually, when they meet you, is that a true reflection? Because sometimes it's not. Your PR can be so good.
Yeah, well, exactly.
That when they meet you face to face, it's like, hold on, this doesn't seem like the same person that's.
And I think
portrayed.
also there's, in this day and age when social media is used by brands to sort of manage their public relations, where we have our banks, for example, who are ready, and even our cell phone companies, who are ready to respond to any complaint directed at them on services like Facebook and Twitter. And you find that you are helped so much more quicker when you complain on Facebook or on Twitter than you would say if you'd gone the traditional route of calling someone. It's because that Facebook and Twitter is so much more in the public eye, and that they realize that their credibility is at stake, that everything that they purport to be hangs on the line there, because they realize as well that how quickly one complaint on Twitter can go viral. And I mean, I've had experiences where, so I launch a complaint with a brand publicly on Twitter, and I'm helped immediately. And they then take the conversation in private on DM, direct messaging. And when I then respond, they advise me, do this. And when I respond again to say, in private, to say, no, that does not work, I get no response. Because that's private and nobody is seeing. Yes. And it's obviously this problem is becoming too hard now,
Exactly.
It's too complex. It's just easier to ignore. So I think also there's, part of when we talk about this, public relations is the effect of the public eye and the need to appear to be something.
Exactly.
And it comes back to that sincerity again. Are you really what you say that you are? And I agree with Robin. I think that on some stage there is some kind of interrogation happening in the world of is our lifestyle sustainable? Is the way that we've structured ourselves in the world really sustainable? And it sounds frivolous, thinking about brands or credibility of brands or credibility of anything in relation to how the big bad world is structured, but it is a symptom of the way the world is structured. Yes. And the way we react to it and the way we live within that world.
Exactly. And that's, you talk about, in the past, now, for example, Hello Peter, that was started by a professional speaker like I am, who, like a suing for service campaign, he decided he was going to do a service website. Now that's turned into, to me, I think some good comes out of it, but essentially it's just been swallowed up because I've used that and got nowhere with it, because they've got a team of people there that just sort of brush over what gets presented. If there's anything sincere that you confront, which to me I confront at the highest level, and that's why in my suing for service campaign I say I charge higher than the CEO's salary to fix it, because if I charge less than that, they're not going to respect my advice. So, and they need to come to me, because if I go to them, I'm in their territory and I'm trying to help them do what they're already doing. I'm confronting them as a consumer, and then I'm saying I can help them as a professional. And as a consumer, I'm a sophisticated consumer. And when they send me an unsolicited SMS from a brand that I don't use and I'm not likely to use, that's obviously just been bought from a mailing list that shouldn't be out there, it's a grey area thing. When I confront them on that, they need to change on a level that they're not prepared to change on, so they just go quiet and they wait to see what I do with it. Or they, in the case of Siemens, they just put their lawyers onto me and try and snub me and say, we regard this as matters closed. But the evidence that I've presented systematically is not only showing them up and showing them solutions, and not only have I addressed it, I'm not one of the customers who just walks out. I'm that very rare one that cares, and then I'm an extra rare one within that, because not only do I care, but I've got resources and solutions, and I will not let it go. They just don't know what to do, because it means they actually have to start being honest, which is something that would mean the whole structure would fall.
Promised you in the first place.
So they put the lawyers onto me and then wait to see what I'll do, you know.
So just that point of honesty, because that's sometimes, I mean, we're all human. We make mistakes. Things happen. So part of, to me, being credible is when something happens, is how you handle it.
Yes.
So we talk about, that you can lose credibility. It's very difficult. It takes you a long time maybe to build it up, but you can lose your credibility instantly. And sometimes it's from misinformation. So what do you say about someone that's trying to repair, if we can use that word, repair their credibility? And for me, them being honest in the role they played or didn't play would be part of that.
Yeah, watershed.
I've recently had an experience where a friend of mine lives abroad in Doha, and he had a small problem with his credit card. And he could not fix it. It was a transaction that went wrong, but he could not fix it because he was abroad. He needed to be calling from a local South African number. So he then gave me, all the credit card number, whatever, and it was fixed in 2 minutes. So this was months ago. It was fixed and we forgot about it. A few months later, now I just used my number to fix that. We did not change any details of his when we did that. So a few months later, I then get a phone call from a cell phone company asking for my friend. Now, our names are totally different. There's no way that we could be mistaken for each other. We're not married. We don't live with each other, so that, to think that correspondence may have...
link.
It was that incident, clearly, that...
that, and then to build... So, obviously, that bank had sold my friend's details to the cell phone company. So this was the first breakup of that bank's credibility, because a bank is something very, very personal. So you immediately felt, when I narrated the incident to my friend, because this is, of course, his details, he felt violated almost. And then and of course we had that incident. We thought it was a periodic mishap, and life went on again. And few months later, I start getting, the notifications on your cell phone every time when you swipe it. I start getting notifications every time he swipes his card.
No.
It's unspeakable, huh?
Really.
Okay, so bringing it back then to the credibility, because that's you're saying, that's your story with the credibility of the bank.
Yes, so his entire, I'm saying how much trust is couched into a sense of credibility. Where, and things like this, incidents like these sort of erode
that trust, which erodes the credibility.
So how do we get it back? I think, if I think about this bank, first of all, they've got to own up to the fact to their customers to say, yes, we do share your details with X and X company. I mean, just that honesty.
Yeah. But then, whilst they're owning up, they might as well own up as well to the fact that they manipulate the market entirely in their favour. That if I spend R1,000 on my credit card, I've effectively signed personal surety on my house, but if I put 500,000 Rand into my credit card, they have nobody there signed any surety for that. If the market crashes and the bank goes under, I get nothing. So the contracts are entirely skewed in their favour. And whilst they're at it, they can also admit that they manipulate the mentality of the consumer to buy things they don't want at credit they can't afford. So whilst they're being honest, they'll actually just say, look, we really are completely out of date. We've been living in the 20th century where organised crime could be hidden, and now we can't hide it anymore, and we really need to restructure everything. So they don't have the courage to do that.
And so I mean, you can understand why. I mean, the whole banking system would crumble. Right?
But that's what we need.
Exactly. Everything that they stand for would disintegrate. But we do need a kind of interrogation of what has been going on and how we can fix things from here on.
And then what we need is every individual to be more aware, because you can't change a problem on the same level that it exists. So this is why this credibility thing's got two levels. The one is where the old model just repairs it. You just ignore it because people have to eat, so they still go into the shop. I had an incident with Pick n Pay. I had a problem there on the Sunday. I left a message for the branch manager. On the Monday, I was back in there spending money. He was there that time, so when I called him, he hadn't got the message. I had to confront him 3 times. The third time was when I went to the till, and there was still a queue there. And I went and got him for the third time, and I said, you haven't listened to me for the first 2, and you've told me all these excuses. Just get those tills open. And then there was a shift, and the lady said to me, good morning, sir. Would you like a packet?
So you being consistent helps you change that.
The individual is the only source of power, because the system that's hoodwinking us can't bring in a new policy that's congruent and honest. The individual needs to stand for authenticity, and sometimes you need to risk everything. You need to risk your income, you need to risk your social acceptability, because those are the mechanisms of being manipulated. Is you go and become a PR agent where you're doing something against your authenticity because it pays the bills. And that's where entrepreneurship comes in, is you'll do something because it really, really matters to you, and you'll stick to it through thick and thin. I've got a friend, I'm going to his book launch this week. He's written Killing for Profit, Julian Rademeyer. He's been a journalist for many years. Journalists are depressed people. They're doing it because they believe in what they're doing, but management is really having these behind-the-scenes meetings. There's no money in it. It's a very depressed business to be in, and he's gone and written this very difficult book about the rhino trade. And the book hasn't even been launched officially, and he's been on Al Jazeera, he's been on I think it's some of the major channels already about this because it's topical. So now his career is just being launched with this book, and he's now a spokesperson for it. And it's wonderful for him because it's kicking in for him. But he's had 20 or 25 years experience preparing him, ripening him to be able to stand for what he really believes in.
And so now he's credible with that 20. So part of credibility is your track record.
Absolutely.
And
if I may pick up on that, it's an example I sometimes use. The 2 people that I use as an example for that are George Michael and Tiger Woods. If you remember, George Michael had an incident where it was entrapment in America. The cops knew that that people were doing a certain thing that was a grey area in terms of the law. They trapped him. And what he did with that is he went on and he was authentic. He went on CNN and he spoke openly. He came out as being gay. He said, I'm a human being, this is how I live, this is what I do. He made a video and a song about it, and he turned it into something that changed people's understanding of, obviously, the gay community, but of your own self, the shadows in your own self. Tiger Woods, on the other hand, just went into the shadows, got some PR advice, came back out and apologized and tried to patch things up. And that's what the American public wants, is for you to just apologize and say you were wrong and go back to, humbly saying, I'll fit in again. That's the difference between somebody or a corporation who doesn't do it authentically, in the Tiger Woods instance, George Michael is the more authentic person. A much more risky thing to do, but a much more revolutionary one.
Khadija, you write a lot around areas of politics. In fact, your articles, I'm sure if the politicians read them, sort of make them squirm a bit. So in the area of sort of politics or politicians, political parties and politicians as brands, how do they mend, credibility when it's been broken or tarnished between them and their followers?
I mean, I think currently in South Africa we have that problem, where we have a president with an absolutely shattered public image, among even his core supporters, among even his own political party. And then you have his spokesperson, who is supposed to be building bridges for him, who is actually burning bridges when he is out in the public. So how does President Zuma fix that? How does he fix that? First of all, does he fire his spokesperson and get somebody who's more accessible to the media and who's says nicer things, or does he stick to his guns because that's just who he is, and to hell with the rest of it? I think it comes down to President Zuma having to ask himself, and I mean the thing is that President Zuma is not just acting alone. He is the president of a whole country, so yes, he has to think much more broadly than say me, who can say to hell with the rest of the world. I think that it's important for him to have good open communication channels with the media, because they are his conduit to the rest of the people. It's also important for him to mend his his channels to people within his political party and people on the grassroots, among his grassroots support. And how does he do this? I think it starts off with looking at who his advisors are and looking at what he seeks to achieve with his time. So he wants another 4 years in office. Why? Just because he wants to be the president? Or, this is...
I think there are a few hundred million reasons why he wants to be the president again. He was essentially broke when he was elected, and he's not broke anymore, and that applies to every president. They're in it for personal gain, and it's not so much about it's about as advisors, it's about the community actually saying, it's not about him firing his PR agent, it's about the community firing the president. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And whilst we added firing the whole political structure, because that is what the problem is. I mean, we glorify the American president when Obama was first elected, the man was stepping into becoming probably one of the largest mass murderers in the world. Why is that glorified? If I would never run for office because I don't want to be involved in that.
And I think that you bring up Obama Obama has this shiny image around the world. I mean, 2 weeks ago when he was re-elected, I had people here in suburban Joburg who were celebrating his victory as if they were Americans, which is quite bizarre.
It's entirely bizarre.
But he has this shiny image as this good
Salvation,
man, the antithesis of George W. Bush, an educated man, an articulate man, a man who's gone out and fought for poor people in Chicago, a man of the people. But then there's also the other side of President Obama, and the fact that he operates a kill list, where every Tuesday he meets with his most trusted advisors. Yes, the Mungezi's eyes about the size of sources, but I mean, this is a well-known fact. It's not something out of an obscure conspiracy theory. This is well-known fact. Every Tuesday, President Obama has a meeting with his, top 5 advisors, which would be the Secretary of Defense, State, and the CIA. And they have a list of the most wanted people around the world, America's enemies, and they decide who they're going after. And they then send drones into rural Pakistan and rural Yemen and rural Philippines, and they go out and kill these people. So we have this man with a wonderful image and great credibility around the world, who is actually operating this horrendous extrajudicial entire system. And again, there's sort of a breakup or a lack of congruence, as you rightly said, between what is purported and what is stated and the reality. And I think building a better sense of credibility means bridging those gaps.
So I was going to ask then, how important is credibility? Because it sounds like PR and the media and what we learn about, in the public sphere has such an influence over, what people do. So yes, people need to be conscious and wake up and to go and actually themselves find out information to understand it. But is credibility then really important? Because don't people just do what they do anyway?
Well, I think that's what I was trying to sort of, just from your introduction, it just occurred to me as you introduced, and that's what I was trying to pick up on and maybe calcify. There are two levels here. There's the unconscious world, and then there's the emerging conscious world. Mm-hmm. Now, the unconscious world, credibility is an illusion. You look like you're a super wonderful man, but you're actually a mass murderer, and you're manipulating that perception. So credibility there is a corrupt thing. You just, politicians know, just keep repeating a lie and people believe it's the truth, or keep denying something and people forget about it, or just inundate them with so much news that they're overwhelmed and they forget what happened last week, and they just, you have the royal wedding on the Sunday and then you've got America's biggest enemy on the Thursday, and that now you're in the news again. So on that level of unconsciousness, credibility is in inverted commas, and it's something that's manipulated with money and all of these
resources that you can throw around it,
yes,
to make it seem authentic.
So we're saying as well that we need to reinterrogate the definition of credibility as well.
We just need to wake up, because as soon as we wake up as an individual, you see through that stuff. Now, I personally don't know what to do. I've launched a campaign. It's run for a month. And I don't know what I'm going to do next, because I've confronted people to the point where they just don't get back to me, because they can't deal. Let's look at it empathically. They don't know what to do. Friends of mine have said to me, look, if I were the CEO, I wouldn't know what to do with what you've done, because I know I'm wrong and I know you're right, but I don't know what to do. And I'm going to wait to see what you're going to do next. And I'm going, well, I also don't know what I'm going to do next, because
I'm waiting to see what the CEO is going to do.
Yeah, because and chances are if you go public, if you go even more public with it, or a media outlet picks up the story, the company has more money to buy more media space than you do as an individual.
Except I have this incisive truth, and I'm a human being. I'm flawed. I've got mistakes that I make. But I'm going to stick to my truth, so I'm going to do that. It doesn't matter. I can't go anywhere else. I can only just become more aware. And in doing that, I'm providing a service to the world through what I do, So there's the inauthentic world, and credibility in that is an illusion, and that is restored simply by money or ignoring things. Then you've got the emerging world, which is more conscious people in their own capacities, and a lot of things are going to have to fall away. The banks have been ripping the world off for hundreds of years, and people have been saying so for hundreds of years. So they have to change. We do need the banks to work for us, to serve us, but they don't work for us. You get a call from your bank. Is there anything service-like in what they do? I say that to the bank. They phone me, they say, is that R.F. Wheeler? That's not how you speak to somebody that you're serving. Did you do this transaction? I say to the guy, excuse me, do I work for you? The guy says to me, I just want to see if you did this transaction on your credit card. I say to him, do I work for you? And he pauses and he says, no, Mr. Wheeler, I work for you. I say, there you go. So you get your director to add this to the list of complaints that he hasn't addressed. And if you do all of that, I'll take your call. But they've got it all wrong, and people don't know how to do anything else, because we've been schooled for 12 years to follow the rules and sit in rows and wear our uniforms and give the answers that everybody told us from the outside. So we manipulate in return. Yes, ma'am, I'll write what you said I must write. Please will you give me a gold star, and I'll get a nice job, and maybe I can earn some money to pay off my home loan. That doesn't work anymore. You've got to be authentic, and you've got to risk certain things for that.
So as you're saying, the emerging consciousness that's coming out is needing to be more authentic and have integrity and stick to the guns and speak up.
And you must, that is the essential spiritual endeavor that we all have, is to be truer to ourselves and to stand for that in the world. You can't...
And that'll be the true credibility.
Yes, that's true integrity emerging. That's the gap between who you are and what you say gets smaller, so congruence becomes stronger. And then a certain power comes through you. You're not just paying lip service to things. Any politician can stand up and read a speech written by
someone else,
a speech writer. But to actually speak words of authentic power is a different thing. You need to go on that journey yourself. So there's no shortcuts. You know, we're all going to get hoodwinked until we wake up.
Yeah. So if people want to get hold of you, Robin, what's the quickest way, or just one way they can get hold of you to ask you more about your Soon for Service?
I think probably just Twitter is probably the easiest. Robin Being, because my brand is being yourself for a living. So Robin, my first name, and then Being. So it's at Robin Being. Just look me up on Twitter.
Great.
Same for me. My name on Twitter at Khadija Patel. I'm most likely to be there.
So yeah, if you want to hear more, you can more about our guests. You can see the whole profiles on our website or tweet them. You want to?
Yeah, I think, I mean, for me, the top 5 things I picked up to, you know, build credibility: have sincerity of purpose, be authentic, be congruent. You know, what you say and what you do should match in the eyes of whoever you're trying to build congruency in front of. Be honest, open the communication channels. Yeah, and get a hold of us on Twitter at LT Possibility.
Yeah, we'd love to hear your views on the topic of credibility.
Thanks so much for having us. Thanks for a great conversation.
Thank you.
From all of us then, here at Let's Talk Possibility, have a great week and go share the possibilities.